suspected contamination, then PFARS will be responsible for cleaning it up? Okay.
And we'll do that very early.
Yeah, in language. Okay.
I was going to also say that just for the public, the amount for the cleanup would we would have to do that anyway.
Yes.
If we weren't switching the property, if it was just staying there, we would have to clean it up anyway. So the $250, the amount that you mentioned for the cleanup, this isn't any additional. This is something that the municipality would have to do.
Correct.
Just so we're all clear. We have to clean up the site anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Ms. Butler?
So related to the site, I'm just wondering if we've made any progress on moving the gas
The fueling station.
fueling station.
The only progress we've made is the engineering department has honored my request and given me a list of alternatives that we can discuss that might make sense to relocate it, but we have not had any discussion. Bob met his deadline, I did not meet mine, which was to look at them. But we do have some options. So we'll be looking at that in conjunction with Public Works and obviously, representatives from council to make the best decision.
And a question on 6 and 7, the fundraising issue. Are we going to have some commitment, firmer commitment about what level of fundraising you expect to achieve? I mean, you talk about a go, no-go kind of decision. If you can't raise X amount of money, is that going to be public? Or is there a number by which, if you don't raise, we don't go forward?
There's not a set number yet, and I think last time we met, I tried to address this briefly in that, we haven't put a lot of money into this project yet as far as architectural drawings or renderings, so we really haven't started to get into any deep amount of design yet. So we're really not sure what the building is going to cost. So with your approval tonight, one of the first things we're going to do is call our architect tomorrow and say, okay, we actually have a site. Let's start to develop some plans. We'll get some schematic plans drawn up, and then we can start to do some budgeting based on those schematic plans. Then I think we'll be able to get to a point where we can say, here's an estimated cost, here's what we think that we can handle, and then we can get back to you and share the numbers and have those discussions with the council, and hopefully, the project continues at that point. But
And again, I think the critical thing that we kind of went through, maybe we glossed over it at the last presentation, was the fact that we do have the ability to structure the debt. We still need to be comfortable with it, that the squad can make those payments, but doesn't need to be a straight line amortization like your mortgage would be. We can structure that as we did with the parking garage to make sure that their revenue pace can keep up with the pace of repaying the debt. And that may be with however they're fundraising or whatever. So that's the purpose of 9, is to sit down and see where they are financially, paragraph 9, see where they are financially, what we can do in which to make the project go, but also make sure that the governing body is confident, as well as the squad, because they're going to want to be confident also that those payments can be made.
And what would be that anticipated time frame?
I would imagine, well, I don't know how busy the architects are. Obviously, they've had to work on other projects besides ours. But, schematics could take, 3 to 4 months. So I would say late fall, mid-late fall, we could probably come back with hopefully a budget and then start to talk about what the numbers could be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
I had a question about the zoning and I guess paragraph 17 of the agreement. Can we require that it be first aid and rescue use as opposed to just have it a permitted conditional use? Is there a reason for the language that's there that says B2 commercial business designation?
It's just what it is. Well, it's used as it's got municipal purposes now. I don't think it's a big issue one way or the other whenever that ordinance comes. What we want to do is just make sure that the building is a permitted use. If you want to zone it only for that, you have the power of zoning. You can always change it. That's your call.
But
I would suggest you make it a little more generic. Maybe you take the business out and say it's for municipal and or first aid purposes or something like that. So in the event that for some reason this doesn't go forward, you've changed the zoning, you still have the opportunity to use it for whatever municipal purpose you would like to use it
And
for.
that's fine as well. I just didn't understand the full, commercial business designation.
I think that's what it is. Is that what it is, Bob? I don't know. That language was in since the first draft from the attorney's office. I don't want to lean on Trishka because it wasn't her that did it, so.
And so we still own the land no matter what.
Yes, we own,
so
right.
We're zoning for ourselves. But you want to be clear with it.
I intended to be clear, but I guess I'll turn to the people on the planning board and say, is this a concern? If not, we'll just
We could put some wording in there about the appropriate zoning will be put in place or whatever, so you have a lot of leeway. The squad obviously just wants to make sure we can build the building, so as we get through our schematics, we can come back and we can work with the zoning office to say, here's what we need. They can look at the zoning and recommend changes that you all will have to see and agree to, so you'll have plenty of time to look at that way before we actually start, building anything.
And I think that's fine. It's just, we wouldn't want to surprise we're 25 years down the line, we're all gone, somebody comes in and wants to sublet, right? And
25 years, I mean, don't worry, I think it's less sooner than that.
Because technically, we don't have to comply with zoning, right? We're
correct.
not governed by
Correct.
land use regulations.
Okay, thanks.
I want to compliment Mark and the officers of the squad for staying with us through this whole exercise. We've been at it for a long time. I haven't personally been at it for 12 years, but it seems like that at this point. And, we've been through looking at different sites, different possible configurations, and I think we're now at the point where we're pretty close to being able to go ahead with it. And I really compliment you guys on having stuck with us through this whole exercise.
Including tonight, sitting through all this.
Could I move that we approve the
Yeah, with
MOU?
with the changes,
Right.
so there was a change in
As amended.
13 and in 19. Were those the two changes?
And also in paragraph 5, where it goes from 2 properties to 3 properties, yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be, but it was moved by Ms. Butler. Is there a
Seconded,
second?
second,
Seconded by
second,
Mr. Liverman, and we
second.
can open it up for public comment. Yes, Ms. Clerman.
Mary Clerman, I'm at 121 Harris Road, which is essentially a block away from the operation that you're planning. Sounds like it's terrific. It sounds like it's taken a very long time, and I'm sorry to impose any additional requirements on that, but I just wonder, and I keep wondering, if what your planning process is, and maybe, maybe you've figured this all out already and I don't know about it, but my concern is that if your planning process is completely held within your department, within your organization, that maybe you'll be missing some input that would be useful. What I'm suggesting is that if you have a general plan or a general set of needs, that you communicate also or consult with community representatives who are good architects or good designers or whatever before you make a decision on it. And what I'm thinking about is the process that happened with the pool, that the recreation department came up with a plan, and then it was the local architects who were volunteers, I think, who actually resolved it so that we got it done on time. I would hope you'd go through a similar process.
Sure. So a couple times in the past, over the many years we've been at this, we thought we were close to doing a project. And each time we've held neighborhood meetings wherever we thought we were going to build the building. So we will be doing that again, and we'll make it very clear to the public that they're invited to come whenever we have enough information, and so we can share that with people, and we're open to comments and concerns. So absolutely, there's not a problem.
Yeah, not even just the 3-minute concerns and contributions that people like me would be able to make, but it's said again and again how much expertise you have in this community and how much it needs to be utilized. It could even save you money to use these people instead of paying for consultants outside. I'm not even sure about that. The other thing I want to make a comment on is that you're talking about a process that's going to eliminate maybe 1/3 of our options to get to 206 because the end of Terhune Drive is where about a third of the turns are actually made. And the reason they're made there is that there's a stack up of people turning on Cherry Hill. So you have a real challenge in figuring out a traffic arrangement that will work there. I wish you well with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Scott Sellers. I fully support the objective of getting PFARs into a better facility, and this is not a criticism of questioning the need or the feasibility of this facility, but it is the financing of it. It is going to cost money. If the appraisal came in at $1.5 million for that land, the $1.5 million was not in any capital budget that we've ever seen out of the administration. So that $1.5 million will be added to our capital plan when the trigger is pulled. Second, the appraised value, I presume, is for the land and the building. Although when we decide to use it, we're only going to want the land, and we're going to have to pay to tear down the building that we're buying in the process. So in reality, what we ought to be laying out would be the value of the land less the cost of removing the structures thereon. That's just an idea of an added cost to the town. Third, and I'm not sure whether this is in the contract or the MOU or not, Bob, but the timing on the whole arrangement, it would seem to me that PFARS is not going to want to move 1 inch until it's sure it can move the whole mile. And that is, they get their funding done, they get the building built, and then they move out of that facility and into the facility on Valley Road. Likewise, we're not going to want to take ownership of the land and in reality even tear that building down and remediate until we're positive that PFARS is going to be able to make the whole mile. So while it's good to be looking at the long-term picture, I just want to make sure that none of this is happening until we're sure that PFARS has got their full funding. And I wouldn't even tear the building down because we don't have an obligation to remediate until that building is moved. And so until that time, unless, we want to afford that cost now, it is not wise to tear buildings down where you think you're going to trigger an environmental liability immediately. And then lastly, I didn't see anything on the tear down of the building or remediation in any of the operating budgets. And I do find it curious that we went through this whole exercise of producing a 5-year capital plan with this and received an administration's capital plan without having this in there at all. Now, if things aren't going to happen in this project for a number of years, which could be the case because the fundraising takes that long, then you don't have an issue. Otherwise, you're staring at a significant deviation from the capital plan that you guys have in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just comment on a couple of those things. One is that the site remediation funding is in for 2014. Yeah, it is in. I just double-checked it here, so I do have it highlighted, at least in the draft that we gave to the council on the 23rd of March. So that much is in there. With regards to the, if you want to call it a credit towards the property cost, I would agree with you 50% of the way on that one. It's going to really depend on what use the governing body chooses to use that property for. So let's say that they decided that it makes a good affordable housing site. Then the cost of that, the land and that property, could go against funds that we have purchased that we've collected for affordable housing through either business or development opportunities and the like, where we assess those people when they come in for projects. So there are options that could offset some of the potential costs that the town is going to have. Yes, there's a cost there. You're right, it doesn't show up here yet until we know what the final financing is going to be. I would suggest that the governing body, and they'll probably hear from me well before December, start to talk about what those potential uses are there, because I think that's integral in why we might want to have that property come into the town's property inventory. So good point taken, and we've kind of thought a little bit ahead of that, of where you are, Scott, but it clearly is not within this 6-year plan. But it would not be expended this year regardless. It's unlikely it would be expended even next year, because I can't imagine that we're going to be able to get it all done and built within, I guess, an 18-month period of time. I would hope we could, but that would be a pretty aggressive schedule given where we are and the fact that we don't even have an architect on board yet.
No, we have an architect.
Okay, we have an architect.
We have an architect.
Okay. We're going to give him his
We've
pen
had
tomorrow.
the same architect for quite a while. He's
Okay, very
tired of
good.
designing
Okay,
different
I stand
buildings in
corrected
different
there.
places.
Okay. But now that we have a site, but we have a long ways to go. Let's just put it that way. And,
Right,
but hopefully we can go fast track.
Yeah, I would hope so. And with all due respect to Scott, and wherever you are, there he is. You can't, as a citizen and a taxpayer in town, he's got very good comments, and they should be said. But I would say, from the squad's point of view, I would hope that the town is in a position to move ahead with the removal of the building and the remediation. It would send a kind of a negative signal to people that we're going to approach for fundraising if the town says, yeah, we have an agreement with you, but we're not going to take any action to move ahead. So to help us raise money, I think the sooner the town starts to do something that shows that this is something that they plan on moving forward with and following through on, the better it is for us. And the better for every taxpayer, because the more money we raise, the less likely we are to come back to you for a significant amount of money.
Well, there's a motion and a second already. Oh, and Kip, yes, sorry.
Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. Of course, I've been through the building, and I know they need a new structure. I would comment that I think in the long term, there needs to be a long-term maintenance plan and money committed long-term to keeping the building up so that we're not in this again. But I am very concerned about the financial aspect of this, and I'm concerned about the debt that the community may well be taking on. And I echo Scott's comments about the capital budget, which is what the capital budget is for. And this is a major undertaking, and we've been told that we can't take on any more debt until, I think, 2019. Is that the right number? Do you know?
It's not that we can't take on any more debt because we have to do a regular maintenance. It's just we have to be careful. I think the message is we have to be careful about how much we take on because we're constrained and we have a big obligation between the years from now until 2019.
Right. My understanding was that all of our debt essentially was spoken for by ongoing activities until 2019. This is a major project. And frankly, I think it's going to take a major commitment by the entire community to make this happen. We've been through this a number of times. We've been through the Arts Council. It's very hard to, get all of the money. We've been through this with the pool. Many people have questioned Valley Road School on the same basis in terms of saving Valley Road School, that it's always difficult to raise money. We are a wealthy community, but it's not that easy to raise money sometimes. And I am now involved in raising money for the Clark House, and so I'm out there every day. And so I know about raising money, and I know it's going to take all of us, not just to say to PFARS, you guys raise the money, good luck. It's going to take all of us to participate in activities, to help them organize, to help do the fundraising, not just watch as they do it. We have to be really involved. And I think that, frankly, there should be some kind of a committee overseeing what's going on, because we are taking on debt on our own. We are essentially bankrolling this project, as I read the MOU. I know that the university has kindly offered, I think, $500,000 towards the endeavor, but there's still quite a bit of balance. And my understanding, Bob Brusha, when you mentioned this before, you talked about $1 million from the land, $2 million being raised by PFARS, and the balance, I thought, was going to come from the community to be paid back by PFARS over time. Wasn't that more or less the calculation? And I think it was something like $6.5 million. Do you, back of the envelope?
Well, all of those were back of the envelope. That was merely a conceptual review of how the elements of financing would happen. They weren't specific dollars, because 6.5 million could be.
Well, that's the point I'm making. We don't have a hard cost estimate yet as to how much it's going to cost. The preliminary work hasn't been done, which has to be paid for incidentally, and I might ask, how is the architect going to be paid up front right now? Is there a little nest egg for paying the architect?
The squad is paying for the architect.
The squad has the funds on hand to pay the architect.
Because my understanding is that the revenue stream from charging for services had not allowed PFARS to make a major savings account towards this, that it's been basically, as the money comes in, it's used for ongoing operations, and so there hasn't been an ability to make a lot of savings, which is not a criticism of PFARS, it's just a reality that we need to understand in getting into this.
Right, but that's not an accurate statement. The squad has funds on hand that will cover the cost of the architect or pre-construction engineering cost, all the soft costs for the project that need to be done before construction is started. The funds are on hand. The squad has those funds on hand. And I would just like to make one other comment. You talked about the maintenance plan and things like that. I'd like to stress to everyone, there is no lack of maintenance for the PFARS facility as it exists today. PFARS has never taken shortcuts on maintaining our plant, on our vehicles, or any part of our operation. So I'm not sure where that came from, but there's absolutely no accuracy to that concern.
Well, the main thing is my question going to be, frankly, how much of a nest egg do you have at this point in time?
We have enough money on hand to pay all the soft cost of the project up front.
Because the $6.5 million project, roughly 30% ends up going to professional services, so
there is
a lot
no
of money.
Kip, there is no set number on the total cost of the hard cost of the project yet. As I said a short while ago, we need to get into the schematic phase of the project with the architects and then create a budget from that. Mm-hmm. So until that's done, the numbers that were in the presentation that Bob and I made about a month ago are conceptual numbers. It's simply to outlay a process that would be followed. The numbers, as was stated at that time, were not hard numbers, and no one should fall on those numbers as saying, here are the actual numbers that we will see. So hopefully in several months, we'll have exact numbers. We'll have the discussion with the town on what we think we can raise money for and what exposure the town might have. But anything else to that is, really is, excuse me, is premature at this time. We don't know the numbers.
Okay.
Right. Well, I would just like to recommend for your thinking that there be a committee of, say, 3 people, maybe Scott would be a good member of that committee, to advise and assist PFARS in doing this. This is a major operation that is totally different from anybody who's been operating a rescue squad or a library or anything. This is a construction project. And it's not an easy project, and the money is going to be difficult. And I would think that any advice that can be, regular advice that can help them and also help all of you understand and help the public understand as we move forward how we're doing, because it's going to be a big deal. And as Scott mentioned, it's not even in our budget at this point, and it really should be added to the budget in some form, even though it's a soft number. I just feel like we're getting a little bit the cart before the horse, and I just want to emphasize to the council what a responsibility we're taking on and moving forward with this project.
Okay.
So,
thank you. And I know that I think there's going to be pieces of this where we will see you all many times over the course of the project.
Yes.
So I would hope that even when there's not a decision for council to make, if you can give us periodic updates. I think once you have some building schematics, I think if you want to come back, obviously you're going to need to come back so we can talk about the details of the financing.
Totally updated. We are a very transparent organization. There's no problem there. Anything you want to know, you're going to know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments yet? Ms. Grunwald?
Are you hiring a professional fundraiser?
Yes, we will be. We had to use the services of a professional fundraising consultant to do our feasibility study, our feasibility fundraising study. We will hire a professional fundraiser. So.
And if somebody's watching this or in the audience and is very moved to donate, can they donate now? And
there's
you go on the website?
You can donate right away. You can order before midnight tonight, double your donation, there's no problem.
And is there a way to dedicate it towards the building, or not yet?
Yes, there is. So people can donate by going to our website. They could call our number that's on the website at any time, and we'll get right back to them. So we can make any donation people want to be specifically for this project, right to the project. There's not a problem. We have that all set up.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all, too, before we vote, just on the incredible service that you provide for the community. And I think when we all make our lists of what are the most important things that we need to be investing in, certainly the emergency services are at the top of the list. So thank you for what you do and for sticking with it. And it's good to be moving forward before the building.
We appreciate the help.
Before you completely run out of space. So there was a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, MOU passes unanimously with those amendments, and we will see you back when you have the
You'll
building.
see us often. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go back and we'll do the university. All right. In that case, I'm going to just so everybody knows what we're doing, we're going to go do the next resolution on the Princeton University contribution, and then we're going to go back to the budget and then pick up again with the resolutions. But because we're doing the Princeton University contribution, I'm going to recuse myself, hand over the gavel to Council President Miller, and
I will also recuse myself. Thank you.
Let us know when you're ready for us again.
I can't stand when he does that.
At least 5 of us up here. I'd like to summarize the agreement that we reached with the university, but before doing that, I'd like to kind of bring you all up to date on how we got to where we are. Last fall, the university and the town began negotiations for the voluntary payment by the university to the town to supersede a 1-year verbal agreement that ended in 2013. This past Thursday, the university and the municipality jointly announced what I believe is a groundbreaking agreement. The agreement embodies 3 important principles. First, it's a 7-year agreement that provides fiscal stability between the university and the town. Secondly, the unrestricted voluntary contribution by the university will increase at a rate that is greater than the municipal property tax is permitted to increase under state law. Third, the university has recognized that certain municipal services benefit both the university and the town and have agreed to make a special one-time contribution for new and improved facilities and equipment to support these services. In addition, the university has agreed to provide funds for the purchase of a new freebie bus and will donate a university-owned parking lot on Franklin Avenue to the municipality for future use. I'd like to thank President Chris Eisgruber of the university, who participated in our first meeting, for setting a positive tone for these negotiations. The discussions were conducted in an atmosphere of mutual respect and a realization that the university and the town share many common goals. I'd also like to thank Vice President and Secretary of the University, Bob Durkee, and Director of Community and Regional Affairs, Kristen Applegate, for their positive and constructive approach throughout the negotiations. On the town side, our negotiating team consisted of Councilman Patrick Simon, Administrator Bob Brusheye, and myself. Committeeman Simon and Administrator Brusheye deserve a special thanks for recognizing that these discussions were an opportunity to move our relationship with the university to a new level and working hard to get there. 3 members of council, Councilman Lance Liverman, Councilwoman Jenny Crummiller, and Councilwoman Joe Butler, also helped by providing guidance to the municipal negotiating team. And Brad Middlecoff, who volunteered his expertise in negotiations to the municipality and helped us organize and present our negotiating positions in a rational and understandable format, also deserves our thanks. In the run-up to our negotiations with the university, several members of council, members of our Citizens Finance Advisory Committee, and other volunteers reviewed many agreements between universities and their host communities. I can truly say that this agreement, based on the three principles that I outlined a few minutes ago, is really unique. I believe that it will serve our town well and may serve as a model for establishing how other universities and host communities can work together when they realize that there are many common goals that they share. With that, I'd like to summarize some of the key attributes of the agreement. First of all, the university will make voluntary, unrestricted cash contributions to the municipality, starting in 2014 with a cash contribution of $2,750,000, increasing annually by 4% to a cash contribution of $3,480,000 in 2020. Secondly, the university will contribute $90,000 to the municipality for the purchase of a new freebie vehicle. Third, the university will make contributions to municipal projects, a number of them. Construction of a new storage facility for a Department of Public Works equipment, $250,000. Construction of a new First Aid and Rescue Squad, as we discussed this evening, a contribution of $500,000. Expansion of the Witherspoon Street Fire Station, $250,000, and that is in addition to the $300,000 already committed by the university to this project. Another $500,000 for the purchase of replacement firefighting equipment, and the donation of the existing Franklin Street parking lot to the municipality for future municipal use. The municipality and the university have agreed that if those projects do not go forward, as I've enumerated them, then we will sit down and discuss other possible projects that might be substituted for them. We also took into consideration the possibility of changes in tax status of university properties, and I think we all realize that for many years the university has followed a practice of leaving certain properties on the tax roll, even though these properties could qualify for tax exemption under existing law. And the university has agreed that if the university modifies this practice during the term of the agreement, that for the remainder of the term, the university would express its intent to make annual voluntary payments to the municipality and the Princeton Public Schools in lieu of what they now pay in taxes. And starting in the first half of 2019, the parties have agreed that they would sit down in good faith and consider a new agreement. Those are the highlights, and I would like to express my thanks to my fellow council members, and particularly to Patrick Simon and to our administrator for working with me to secure this agreement that I think will benefit both us and the university, and which I truly believe is a win-win agreement for both the university and the town. And with that, I'll open it for comment from my fellow council members.
Thank you, Bernie. I would like to simply follow on Council President Miller's remarks, and also thank University President Chris Eisgruber for attending the first negotiating session and for indicating the seriousness with which the university took these negotiations from the start in a very positive way. I would like to thank Vice President and Secretary of the University, Bob Durkee, and Princeton University Director of Community and Regional Affairs, Kristen Applegate, for representing the university in these negotiations and working with us as the host community on what I think is a very positive agreement, a very positive outcome for both sides. I do want to thank Council President Bernie Miller for his leadership in throughout this process. And I'd also like to thank Administrator Bob Brusheye for his leadership and also steadiness, and his experience really helped us through this process as well. We had many volunteers. Council had the benefit of many volunteers throughout this process. Many from within our town, a few from outside of our town who donated their advice and expertise, including the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee and Princeton's Municipal Task Force, which studied the agreements between nonprofit, tax-exempt institutions and other municipalities. So I'd like to certainly thank the members of those two committees. I'd especially like to thank Scott Sillers, who's here, who served on both of those committees and who helped organize the numbers in a way that put things in perspective for all of us on council going into this process. And I'd like to thank Brad Middlecoff, who offered his expertise throughout the negotiating process in terms of working with a university as an institution. I do also want to thank my colleagues on the council, Councilwoman Joe Butler, Councilwoman Jenny Krumler, and Councilman Lance Liverman. This was really a team effort. Council President Miller and I were in the room, but frankly the entire council was in the room and was working together as a team on this. And last, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased with the agreement. As I mentioned, I think that we have achieved an outcome that is very good for the municipality and very good for the university as well. I also think the process of getting there was important. One of the benefits that all of us hope to achieve over the past year or two is to maybe turn the page a little bit on the relationship between the municipality and the university and to set a more positive tone. I would characterize our negotiations as direct, but also very positive and respectful, and I think we achieved an outcome that is very good for both sides. And again, I do want to thank the members of the university team who are here tonight for their participation.
I just want to echo the thanks to the negotiating. I want to echo the thanks to the negotiating team and to Brad Middlecoff for helping, and to the university and thank you for the contribution on behalf of the residents. I think we ended up with a win-win outcome, and I'm very pleased with it.
Yeah, I also just want to say thank you, especially to Council President Bernie Miller and Councilman Patrick Simon. Those two, and also Administrator Bob Brusheye, they were in the room, and they did come back and reported, and we did have a lot to say. Councilwoman Butler and Councilwoman Carmelo and Councilman Lance Liverman were not quiet people, so we did speak up. And I want to thank Brad. He stepped up. I mean, that's really a citizen, a person that loves Princeton, to come and step up and do what he did to help us out. It was just amazing. And I think that the relationship with the university and the town, I think this shows respect on both sides. I think it's a great agreement. And I think that Mr. Durkee and Ms. Applegate did a great job representing the university, and I'm just glad this is over, so it's fewer meetings for me. But thank you.
We can cross one off the list. I'd like to add my thanks as well. Thank you to Bernie Miller for his leadership, but a special thank you to Patrick, too, for really making this a collaborative process on council, and really that was your leadership, and so I do appreciate that. I want to thank the university for their contribution and Brad Middlecoff for all his hard work. And you mentioned the other committees that worked on it as well, this CFAC, and so a lot of hands went to work on this project, and all much appreciated.
And do I hear a motion?
I move to
Public.
Comment?
Comment? Comment from the public?
Mary Clerman, Harris Road. I just want to say that I think it's great that you all are working together on the pilot. I know that it's been a long-term project. and I'm glad that there's a cooperative attitude going on, and that's really great progress. I'm just very curious and would like sort of put in black and white, what is the town municipal budget? And sort of what is the percentage that this contribution represents?
Ms. Manzo, do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Well,
speak up, folks.
The town's budget is about 59 million, right?
It's about 59, right?
So, yeah, it's about 59 million, so, you know.
The total budget is 59 million? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and,
Right.
and,
So
and the revenue from
so
taxes
do
is
the math
about,
for me. What is the
the
percentage?
revenue from taxes is about 30 million.
Okay.
And,
About
so
half.
And
this
the-
year, the contribution is 2.75.
So it's 1/15. That's like 6%. Is that right? Sort of, just for
No,
black and white.
well, a
purposes?
little more, right?
So a little under 5% of the total budget, and a little under, right around 9% of the tax.
Okay, thank you.
But also keep in mind, that does not include the properties that are kept on the tax roll. So some residents have mentioned this to me, this number as a percentage of the total budget, but we're just looking at that contribution, not the rest of the properties that are on the tax roll. So if we included those, the number would be much higher as a percentage.
I guess maybe I could say that it would be helpful to have all of that available or known, and so that everybody understands what the whole deal really is as much as possible.
I will hazard to do that from memory, and Ms. Manzo or Scott, please feel free to correct me if I get it wrong, or Mr. Durkee or Ms. Applegate. I think the taxable properties in terms of the payment to the town, it's about 1.8 million if I recall correctly, so that the total revenues between the tax and the contribution will be about 4.5 million.
So it's another almost 2% again. Okay, thank you very much.
And that's in year one. There's growth each year.
President Miller, Jim Floyd, 64 Harris Road. As a citizen of a few years, I extend my thanks to those who worked with the university, and I certainly extend my thanks to those at the university whom I know. Now I'll add a $64,000 question. Does this mean that hopefully the municipality can look upon the $400,000 pilot that Princeton Community Housing renders to the municipality? Can you find a way to kind of waive that without our housing some of the employees at the university and throughout the municipality? $400,000 would mean a lot to us, or we'll take the surface parking lot next to the current housing. Thank you.
Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. I know you all worked really hard at this, and I know that Princeton University is a major institution with enormous capabilities. I do feel, though, that they should be paying more. In terms of the amount of property they own in the town versus the contribution to the budget, it's not comparable. Also, I am concerned that we are sort of priming the capital pump through projects from the university. It's not really clear to me, the chicken and the egg, whether you all have suggested projects to them or whether they suggested projects to us. But we haven't made a determination yet on our capital budget, and yet they're making contributions to projects that the public hasn't decided they want to do. So, for instance, we've just been through this discussion on PFAS today, but in fact, the public hasn't really had a chance to really understand the implications of PFAS because we don't know how much it's going to cost. They're also going to be making a contribution to the firehouse, and we haven't yet had a really good discussion on our fire department and how we're going to proceed with that. Now, the first contribution they made, $300,000, I wasn't actually clear whether it was specifically for the firehouse in Witherspoon or whether it was for the fire department altogether. Can you clarify that? That would be last year's contribution.
They committed to provide a $300,000 donation towards the expansion of the firehouse if we went forward with the project. So
Not to anything, not any other fire department project, just to that. Is that what you're saying?
that was the one we asked them to provide
there
for.
was, yeah, there was actually a separate $20,000 annual contribution to the fire department, separate from
Yeah, that's separate, but that was, yeah, okay.
Okay, because when I discussed it with Mayor Trotman at the time, my impression was it could be used for something else related to the fire department. But in any event, there's been no decision made yet about the firehouse, and I don't know what is implied by our capital budget right now. We have $280,000 in there for a feasibility study for possible expansion, if you want to use that word, of the Witherspoon Street Firehouse. Now, does that include demolition of Valley Road School, or where are we going with that?
There's no funds within the capital budget or planned for in the firehouse expansion that would demolish the Valley Road School. It's not a project that we have any control over, and it's not being recommended by the staff. As you just cited, we haven't done a study on the firehouse. We provided money in this year's budget so that we could start that study to see what their needs ultimately are going to be.
Implications.
The other thing, Kip, maybe I can help you out. In the agreement, okay, we have reached agreement with the university that says that if there's a project in there that doesn't move forward, that they have agreed that they'll fund, you know, a separate project. So we've tried to cover whether or not, let's pretend that we don't expand the firehouse. Those funds could be reallocated towards another project. So I think that the committee that negotiated it was cognizant that, you know, things do change, our priorities change and the like, and the university has
Right,
agreed
that's
with
good,
that.
but again, I repeat that the public hasn't had a chance to discuss the project that you all have been moving forward on, and I have a concern about that
So
for
if
our
the public
community.
gets the council to change their mind and not fund the project, then the council can go back to the university and say, hey, we've changed our mind, we're not funding Project X that you said
I
you pay
understand.
money. Okay, so I don't get what the problem is then.
Well, it is sort of priming the pump, as you well know, that when someone says that they will contribute to X project, there's sort of a certain amount of pressure then on X project to move forward. And, you know, I'm very concerned that we're getting the chicken and the egg mixed up here. And I'm also concerned about the $280,000 allocated for the feasibility study, which is a horrendously expensive feasibility study, and I understand it includes preliminary design. So again, preliminary design comes when you've decided to move forward with the project. It's not part of the feasibility study per se.
Well, it's not. It's just that lump sum money covers a variety of planning things that will need to be done if we're going to move forward with that expansion.
Right. But again, the way it's supposed to work is that the public has some input on these projects. So I think
I don't know how the public can give any input to the council if they don't know what the project is going to be or
Right,
what the
that's the
extent
idea
of
of
it is.
feasibility study, but not proceeding with the design, and you've already put design into the budget, and that's what I'm bringing up. And I'm just concerned that the university is advertently or inadvertently putting pressure on moving forward with these projects.
I'd like to make it very clear that there's no implication in the agreement that these projects will go ahead without the approval of council or without public input. But in the process of negotiating the agreement with the university, we felt it was appropriate to identify candidate projects where funds might be applied and candidate projects that were of mutual benefit to both the community and the university. If this council or some future council makes the decision that these projects or any of these projects are not going to go ahead, the understanding we have with the university is that we will sit down, discuss other alternatives, and try and arrive at a mutual agreement on how the funds might best be applied to needs that would support both municipal needs and needs for services by the university. But there is...
I appreciate that, and I hope the public is listening and appreciates that too, and that's my point. The other point I want to make is that, and I go back to the Kramer report that I'm not sure all of you have even read, but that was the report that said there would be a second firehouse that would be constructed in 10 years' time. That report is about 2 years old now for the fire department. As you recall, we've consolidated 3 firehouses into one, and now we, in that report, there was a recommendation for a second new firehouse. And that new firehouse was supposed to be, as I understood it from listening to public discussion from Kramer and others, that was to be near the near the university. Which is not a bad idea. The point is simply to get everything out so that the public understands what the ideas are and, what the financial encumbrances might be. And as I understand it, there is a fire truck down there now. It's in a building of some sort, so it is housed in something. But I think that the entire plan and the needs of the fire department need to be laid out for the public to understand the whole shooting match. And all of the options. And the options might just not be expanding a firehouse. The options might be to locate some other things in a different location if there's to be a second firehouse. Or, as I mentioned before, consolidating with another fire department might have benefits. And I'm just saying that I'm just concerned that you're going down a pathway without looking at all of the implications. And these implications are very important to our community and what we become, and they're also very important to our capital budget. And none of these things are in the capital budget in a way that reflects this kind of thinking. So, I'm just bringing all this up because I think that we need a broader, more imaginative thinking of how we're going to handle all these things. And while we can still spend capital money before 2019, theoretically, we're not supposed to take on major projects that are not already in the pipeline before 2019.
I can assure you that before we proceed with any major construction project, that there will be ample opportunity for council deliberation and public input. What we have done is to identify potential projects, and if this council, the future council, or the public is solidly against any of the projects that we've outlined here, and we don't go forward with them, the understanding is that we will work with the university to see where those funds might be best applied to the mutual needs of the town and the university. So I thank you for your comment.
I understand. I just want to be clear, though, that you all are specifying in your pilot resolution the projects, and you are specifying in your capital budget these projects. So I appreciate the fact you're going to be getting more public input, but I think sooner than later it would be a good idea. Thank you.
I understand what you're saying, and I see why, from your perspective, it does feel a little bit like the capital projects pump is being primed. You're probably not mistaken in that, but these are also projects that have been, you heard Mark Freitas say, the PFAS has been under discussion for 12 years. We're not finished vetting the project. There's still ways to go, but there is also a trap door. I mean, we don't have to move forward. We can redirect the funds if at some point we decide these aren't viable projects. We've had the $300,000 commitment for the firehouse. I think, how many years has that been part of the pilot? 3? I mean, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a done deal, but it was important to us to find these projects of mutual interest, and that the university has a number of volunteers that serve on the fire department, PFARs, and so those did look like projects of mutual interest, and so that was important to us.
I repeat, if we are going to do a second firehouse, please get that on the table so everybody knows what's going on. Thanks.
Paul Driscoll, Harris Road. I agree with what Kip Cherry is saying, and I think the problem that I feel, and I think I'm expressing it for many, is we don't see a lot of transparency. And I know some of you are campaigning for transparency in government, but for us here in the public, it doesn't feel like transparency. A lot of times it feels like very powerful groups in the university. I'm not criticizing them, but they are very powerful. So whether it's intentional or not intentional, it seems like these very powerful commercial groups come in and they trump our quality of life. There's been discussion about, redeveloping Witherspoon Street. And I was just at the Jackson Witherspoon Street on Saturday, and Jim Floyd asked how many people would be interested in keeping it residential, and almost every hand in the room went up. How many would be interested in having it redeveloped commercially? Almost no hands go up, and yet we all know that there are developers and people coming into town that would like to see it developed commercially, and they seem to be driving things. And we come up here and we speak, and somehow it feels like no matter how many times we come in and talk, that we're overruled. So I'd just like to make that point. I know you're looking at it from a different point of view, but and that's just what I'd like to say. Thank you.
I wonder if Vice President Durkee would like to comment at this point.
Well, thank you. I think the first thing I would like to say is something that Mark Frieda said, which is I want to keep my comments brief so you can get to the vote. I share the views that have been expressed this evening about the nature of the conversations that we've been having over these recent months and about the outcome of the agreement. I think most of what we want to say about the agreement, our President said in the announcement that was issued last week. I do think that we appreciate the opportunity that we have to, I think fundamentally here, do two things. One, provide the community with an unrestricted contribution that will go up annually where you decide how to spend it. This is an unrestricted contribution to the municipality. And we provide funding for a number of projects that you've identified as priorities, and you've just had the discussion about the agreement that if you decide to change your minds about those, then we would provide funding for other projects with those funds. I do agree with something that's said at the very end of the announcement that was issued last week. I think what we've been able to, the agreement we've been able to come to does establish a very effective model for other colleges and universities and their communities in terms of how to work together and in terms of how to structure an agreement over an extended period of time. And I think it is helpful for both of us that we have a 7-year agreement. I guess the only final comment I would make is that if you read your resolution carefully, not all of the funds go in one direction. There are 25 million or so that go from the university to you, but there is $1 that goes from you to us. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Are you getting Heather?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go back to the budget, since Sandy Webb's here, and the first resolution we can do, even without all of our colleagues here, I implore council to pass this resolution. It's so that we can read the budget by title only.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
It's moved by Ms. Howard and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's good. And, well, I think we should wait.
I think they'll be back very shortly.
Yeah, we'll take a minute or two recess until Joe and Lance come back so that we can have the public hearing. All right, well, we're almost all here, so I think, why don't we start back up again? Ms. Butler, we did pass the resolution to read the budget by title only. Hopefully you have no objections to that. And I want to open the public hearing for the 2014 municipal operating budget with the caveat that this is a public hearing for the budget that we introduced. But given that we'll likely be amending it tonight, there'll be another public hearing on the amended version on May 12th. But with that, I'd like to open the public hearing and see if anybody would like to comment on the budget that was introduced last month. Seeing no one, we can close that public hearing and move on to Resolution 14-113, which is the resolution amending the 2014 municipal operating budget. And I'll defer to Ms. Webb to walk us through what the changes are.
Okay, thank you. What you have before you is a little bit different than what went out in the council packets on Thursday. I left them up on your, right in front of your chairs before the meeting started. Just a couple of changes, but I'll go through the entire list anyway. We have the resolution you just approved for the Princeton University additional revenue. We're amending this budget to bring that revenue in. That amount was $275,000. And we've offset that with what we call a deferred charge to future taxation unfunded. We're recommending, and it's certainly, again, up to council's pleasure, to use that money for the bond ordinance that's on for tonight's, for the road improvements. It would be $275,000 less that we would have to bond for this particular ordinance that you'll vote on later this evening. Okay, so I'll keep going. If you have questions, then just feel free to raise them when we get to that section. Some of the other amendments that were made is a lot of the corner house grants were different than what they were the prior year. At the time that we put the budget together, we were not aware of some of the grants. Some of the amounts have changed slightly. Some of the names have changed. So a lot of the amendments that you'll see on the grants are all related with corner house. Some of the other grants that you see in the beginning, there's a bunch of grants that we collected in 2013 that normally we would have done what we call a Chapter 159. We would have anticipated the revenue and brought the appropriation in. Last year was just kind of a whirlwind for us in finance, so all these grants are sitting on our books right now, and in order for us to spend them, we need to bring them into this budget as well. So that takes care of most of the grants and all the other revenue changes that we made. On the appropriation side, we increased the mayor and council's budget back to what the level was budgeted for 2013. At the time that we put this budget together, Kathy and I did not remember that there was a discussion amongst council that to bring this back again before the governing body to discuss what the level of salaries will be for 2014. You left them in 2013 at the level that was recommended by the Consolidation Commission, which were at the old borough salary rates. So there's one of the changes that are in this budget is to increase the level of the budgeted salary back up to what it was for 2013 for the mayor and council. Another change that we've got in this budget is we don't have to tell everybody how bad the storms were this past year, so we've spent an exorbitant amount of money on salt and sand. So we know we're going to need to purchase salt before this year is out, and we've already expended through the salt budget. So we've added an additional $100,000 to put money back into the road budget for all of the salt that we've already purchased, and then we'll have a small amount of money that will be available to them to make a salt purchase before the end of this year. Patrick raised some questions earlier this morning on some of the capital items that are in the proposed capital budget, and he also asked if we were increasing the salary for the appointment of Nick Sutter as the chief. I did not originally include that in there. We knew that we had money budgeted in the salary and wage adjustment account, and at Patrick's recommendation, he said, since we're already going to be amending this budget, let's just include that in here. So you have the additional money in here for the chief, and a couple of other revenues that I did not mention. When our budget was reviewed by the state, there were a couple state aid numbers that were slightly off. Took $12,000 out of one line, put $12,000 in another line. They said since we're amending, we may as well include that as well. So that is all of the amendments that you have before you this evening for introduction. So what I hope is that on some of these things you'll have a dialogue. Nothing certainly will preclude us from re-amending if we wanted to do that next time, but what we're really hoping is to do this, introduce this amendment, have the public hearing on the amendment. This amendment is going to need to be advertised, and then we're hoping to then adopt at the meeting on May 12th. So, this is your opportunity to make, any other recommendations for amendments that you see, and then just give us some direction on the ones that we've already included in here.
Are there any questions? Yeah, Mr. Liverman and then Mr. Simon.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sandy. The Clean Communities, was that a grant?
It is a grant, but what happened when we put this budget together, we don't even know what we're going to collect in Clean Communities. We put the appropriation in there, and we didn't even bring a revenue in, so that just needs to come out completely.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Simon.
So let me start with a basic question. The revenue raised from taxes and the tax rate, what are those two numbers with the amended budget?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Pat.
Revenue raised from taxes as well as the anticipated tax rate?
The tax rates are the same as they were in 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, and this amendment did not make any changes to the tax, so the tax rates are what they were in 2013.
Okay. My next question is on, it basically has to do with the capital. So we heard Scott Sillers mention earlier that in the capital plan we don't have the cost that the town has to fund for the part of PFARs that we're getting through property as opposed to revenue. Mm-hmm. We also, at one of the public hearings, had questions about the size of the capital budget for Mary Moss spray ground, and there was one other item in the Recreation Department budget for the Valley Road School, which I thought, it certainly caught me by surprise. I don't know if it caught the rest of my colleagues by surprise. I wanted to ask about. So I guess the first question is a process question.
Okay,
is now the time to amend the capital, 6-year capital plan as well?
Well, we can. You can amend it now, but certainly at the time that a bond ordinance is introduced, that also automatically amends your capital plan. So I think Kathy and I kind of were thinking that at some point we'll come back with the capital for this year, which you've already seen a few times, and what the administration has recommended, and then we'll introduce a bond ordinance.
Okay, so it is not speak now or forever hold your peace on the capital side.
That's correct.
All right, so with that, I do want to simply share with council that there's been a debate going on within CFAC over whether we are funding the capital side of our costs adequately. There's been no final conclusion one way or the other, but there's certainly concern, especially after, as I understand it from the last meeting, we heard, or you heard, because I wasn't here, that we've been spending about $2 to $3 million less annually for the past 2 years on roads and sidewalks than we had been, and it's hard to see why consolidation would justify that. So presumably it's simply tight budgets, and I actually don't know where that landed in terms of whether we are essentially shortchanging maintenance and incurring debt, essentially backloading our debt, which is actually what it looks like when I looked at the 6-year plan, or if there's sort of justification for this just in terms of the cycle of maintenance requirements needed for the roads and sidewalks. So that is certainly the largest thing that has stood out on the capital side, and I don't know if I'm doing justice to all the full set of debate, but that so I don't know if, Mr. Kaiser, if you have an opinion as to whether we ought to be, for example, spending $2 to $3 million more this year or even more to catch up on maintenance that we have deferred over the past couple of years?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of needs out there, and especially with this winter that we had, there's even more needs. So, we can certainly get by with
get Bob off the hook. This budget is probably pretty light when it comes to what we could and or probably should be spending on our infrastructure needs. Now, that's not an answer anybody probably really wants to hear, but I think it's deserving of having a discussion at the council level. There are a lot of standards in the industry that we can utilize to justify and show the need for more funding to go towards infrastructure. I think Scott had mentioned, and I have a couple times in the past, about how we are an older community. We're not Montgomery. We're not a Hopewell Township that has a lot of new residential development that has new infrastructure. So we need to continue to invest in that, whether it's sewer lines or whether it's our streets. So I think it begs the question. I don't know that it begs the question tonight to have it for your budget this year, but long term, it's something that you should be taking up one evening and just spending an hour, or 2 hours talking about what those standards would be and how many road miles we have and because we had a large plan in the borough, what we invested in, what our program called for. Because I know when Carl Peters was hired in the borough back in the 80s, the borough had not invested money in roads for a significant amount of money in roads for a long time. So they needed to turn that around and begin to reinvest back into their infrastructure. And they were into a huge portion of reconstruction projects as opposed to just, mill and overlays. And mill and overlays can, they can buy you a long time, but ultimately that, you're going to need to reconstruct a road. So I think that it would be a good conversation to have so that you feel comfortable either way you make the decision. Whether you go a little lighter or whether you say, we're going to try to, infuse some more money in there and then let the CFAC committee run those numbers for you with our finance people, with Kathy and Sandy, to say, okay, so what is that impact going to be? Are we willing to commit, say, a penny a year in a tax rate to offset future debt service or some other scenario that helps you control it?
Mm-hmm. And I might recommend a slightly different process too, which is, CFAC has been going back and forth on this, especially Brian McDonald has been the champion of this really important question of how much should we be spending, and it's a pretty complicated question, and to task CFAC with really doing, as full analysis as they can on that as to what ideally should we be spending so that we're at a sustainable level and that we're spending each year what we should be so that we're not spending too much, putting the burden on ourselves now, and we're not spending too little so that we're putting off major expenses for future generations. And it's something that's going to take a lot of time and probably makes most sense to do at the committee level. And now that there's an agreement with the university and we're almost done with the budget, CFAC is probably looking for something to do. So, but in all seriousness, I think it would be a really useful project for us, I think, as a new municipality to have that analysis done.
Well, the reason I have a little bit of a sense of urgency is that the question is whether we should start this year and whether we should amend the budget to essentially increase the revenues available to the town for this type of investment. In addition to the roads and sidewalks, the other thing that strikes me about our capital planning is we push the public works project out, not the small cold storage project, but the larger public works building out beyond the 6-year horizon. That means this hot potato has been pushed out now about 25 years or so, because it was on the table for the consolidation debate prior to the one that we just had back in the mid-90s. So the question is whether we're essentially pushing things a little bit too far out on the capital planning side, and if we need funds for some of these larger projects, do we need to start this year essentially making an investment in that? And that's a question that we're struggling to answer, honestly, on the CFAC side, but it's certainly a concern.
Yeah, the problem is I don't know if we have enough data, if we're going to have enough data in the next few weeks to make that decision with any degree of certainty versus going through the process that's been outlined. Yeah, Ms. Butler?
Well, to Patrick's point, I thought we were going to also see what other capital projects were eliminated from the budget.
Yes, you will. I was working on that this evening. I'll send it out in the morning.
Okay, because that would give us really an even fuller picture of what our capital needs might be, and when we're looking at whether or not we ought to raise the taxes, we'd need to know how much exactly has been pushed off. But also, I think from engineering and public works, I'd be sort of curious to know what our capability to do the road work is, whether we're looking at bidding it out, and just, we've heard that doing the road work in-house is less expensive, but how much can we really do, I guess, and, what does that look like, internal versus external?
Sure. If I could comment on the road work that traditionally the former township did, it was just simply the overlayment work, and they did 2 to 3 miles of that type of work per year. But we've had things that have happened this year with all the potholes. The focus is on potholes as opposed to overlays, so Public Works wouldn't even have the time to do that type of work now. Perhaps in the future they will. Also, the paving machine that the Princeton's own jointly with Lawrence Township is in disrepair. So that either needs to be fixed or it needs to be replaced. So looking in the future, that's something we should look at, but this year it just doesn't work to do that because of the constraints I've mentioned.
And to fix or replace that machine, is the number 250, 400, am I recalling correctly, that piece of equipment?
I believe it was around 250.
Ms. Kramer?
Well, back to Patrick's question, the data that we do have is that it will be for 2 years. I mean, are you saying that that we're adding another year to the, that last year we spent less, on maintenance, or
Certainly, Mr. Kreiser, correct me if I've got this wrong, but my understanding is that we've spent $2 to $3 million less in 2013 and in 2012 versus the historical average for the combined municipalities prior to that.
Yes, that's correct.
so is that not enough data to know that we shouldn't do it again?
Well,
Necessarily.
I mean, no?
Well, Bob, what year did we do Mercer? I mean, wasn't that 2012?
Time flies when you're having fun,
Because
Joe.
that project alone was,
Finished it up in 2012, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I think the actual project most of it was 11, but I think 12 we finished it. But you know what, I could be off a year.
Yes, because,
But we funded it.
You're right.
We
It was-
funded it prior to that, obviously.
right, but that was a $2 million project.
That was a $2
I'm just
million
saying,
project
you know,
just to itself.
it could have influenced the numbers. It was a huge project for the borough. If we were only spending $3 million, in 1 year we did Mercer, and it was 2.
I mean, it seems like a lot of these things we can move numbers around, but if every year for the past, 10 years or 20 years or however long, we've been spending a certain amount, and then 2 years we reduce it, it seems like that wasn't a conscious decision, right? Or
I think part of it is because of staff time to oversee the projects, and the timing of consolidation consumed a lot of time, and
that's more reason that it means we're behind, right?
I think Jenny has hit on a point, and that is that in the past, historically, the borough spends somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million a year on road repair. The township spends somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million a year on road repair. It's a total of 6, and now we're spending half that. Continue that for any length of time, and we're just deferring maintenance and pushing it off to the future.
So what would it look like if we were to go back to pre-consolidation road repair for the 2014 budget?
Well, you'd be adding $2 to $3 million. If you didn't take anything else out of the budget, you'd be going from, a $9 million budget to a $12 million budget this year. You'd be going from a $10 million budget to a $13 million budget next year. So, I mean, I understand, and you're absolutely correct in your assessment. When we put this budget together, though, so you know what was driving it was the concern that was expressed by CFAC that we've got to try to cap our spending to a certain degree, yet still try to provide for, a modicum of programs and projects that needed to be done. So, it's not a science, unfortunately. It's just it's priorities, and wherever your priorities are.
When we were talking about our reserve, I think we spoke about the township experience and the fact that there was a period of time where the township let our reserve go down, and it took us several years to turn that around and bring the reserve back up again. And I think we're facing much the same kind of situation here with a repair of the roads and infrastructure as we did with the reserve. We can't turn it around in a year, but I think we've got to start the process of turning it around now and continue to work on it over a period of time to bring it back up to where it should be.
Can I also just ask an informational question with respect to roads? They're typically bonded for what length of time? Is it 10 years, 20 years?
Yeah, those were 20.
They're 20? Because one of the other questions that CFAC has been wrestling with is, how do we go from routinely paying for maintenance, which we know we're going to have every year, which in the past has been capitalized, to trying to get off of that? And again, we have not come to any conclusions. The only strategy I've even thought of that might help would be to conceivably short bond some of these. Instead of go for 20 years, even though it's got a 20-year life cycle, go for 10 years. It drives down your overall costs over time, and it's not that much more on an incremental basis annually, and over a period of decades, you drastically improve your capital situation. So it's sort of like it's the municipal equivalent of paying your mortgage down more rapidly, right, than you need to. So I'm looking at a spreadsheet. Excel has a neat function called PMT, which essentially is the secret that all of our consultants have been using to tell us what our payments are per loan. And for a $2 million loan spread out over 10 years at 3% interest, it's $234,000. So if we thought we needed $2 million more spending this year, it seems to me that's entirely affordable. Our tax cut last year, if I recall correctly, cut about $1 million from our revenue. So we would not even have to fully restore it in order to get $2 million back into the budget this year if we were capitalizing it on a 10-year basis instead of a 20-year basis.
Can you just say that one more time? Because you
Yes.
lost
Yeah,
me.
sure. All right. So, actually, I'm sure the professionals are going to have to check my numbers later to make sure I got it right. But a $2 million a capital expense funded over 10 years at 3% interest is $234,000 and change per year to pay it off. So if we wanted over 10 years, and it would be much less if we wanted to make it over 20 years, which is the traditional way of funding a road project. So I think we do have options that are reasonably affordable given the current fiscal situation in the town that don't drive up debt too much, but that allow us to start.
We just established a policy, trying to keep debt.
You have to use the mic, even though we can hear you.
We just got through establishing a debt policy, and where capital was, we're going to maintain limit the amount of capital of borrowing that we did for capital in order to limit the amount of growth in debt service by 1.5% or some amount per year, so it would stay within the overall growth of the overall budget. Now you're turning around and you're basically saying, hey, $2 million, let's just borrow it. It only costs us 10% of that a year. That's just going right against the debt policy you just established a month ago. Because you're doing $10 million, you're doing $2 million. We're going to borrow. We're going to add on $2 million more debt this year. That's $200,000 more in debt service for borrowing that we didn't have in the budget. Then you're going to do it next year again, because we've got this repeating $2 million problem, and you're just going to keep on going on that way. Now, that's fine, but just don't fool yourself into thinking that you just solved a problem by borrowing money, which you didn't. All you're doing is just adding on to debt. The solution to this really is, if you want to maintain debt, either give up on maintaining the growth in debt service, or you fund more of your capital projects with something other than debt. And, without anything else out there, that's got to be increasing taxes. You could do a little bit with surplus if we knew what surplus was really going to do, which might be a thing to do. I would say that we do not have a handle on this at all right now. Do we have the capacity to even spend $2 million this year on additional capital projects? I would question that, just based on the backlog of stuff that they have going on in the first place. I would think that it would behoove us to step back and look at this from a much bigger picture before jumping the gun and increasing capital spending. You may want to increase taxes a little bit in order to start paying a little bit more, but I wouldn't just jump into the spending more until you've got a real long-term game plan on how it's going to be done, how it's going to be staffed, whether we have the capacity within the administration to take on more projects, or even if the projects are out there at this point.
Yeah, Ms. Krummeyer?
Scott, can I ask the question, there were two different opinions on your committee. Is there another opinion that says something else?
No, I think that's entirely consistent.
I can sort of summarize, I think part of the issue is that I think what we're trying to do is create something sustainable and keep things either flat or only slowly growing. But there's a big assumption there that you want to keep it where it is. And the question is it where it should be? And if it's not where it should be and you're keeping it essentially where it is and you're really not spending enough on maintenance, then you're going to have to pay the piper at some point when your infrastructure's, I don't know if I'm capturing that right.
Correct. But right now, all we've got is anecdotal evidence. I've heard this $2 to $3 million number. I haven't seen it on paper. I haven't seen, we haven't gone and taken our last 5 years' worth of capital spending and laid it out and said, this is how much was on roads. Let's see those numbers before we just pull the trigger on it. That's not to say that everybody's hunch might not be right, and maybe you should raise a little bit of extra revenue to accommodate what could be coming down the pipeline. But to say that we can wing it and have an answer at this point, I'd say we don't.
Well, let me jump in and agree with Scott that this is a pretty complex problem. The spending, historical spending, is actually higher on our debt service than it had been, and I don't think we've fully analyzed the reasons for that either. But the targets, if I recall correctly, and somebody can correct me if I got this wrong, targets for the township prior to consolidation were around 5 million, and the targets for the borough were around 3.5 or 3.6, something like that, which is 8.6 summed together, and we're well above that now. Even though we've been underspending on roads for 2 years versus the historical average. So it means we spent money somewhere else. Or we timed the projects in a way that created a hump in our debt burden, and we have to work our way through it. And so to Scott's point, the policy had several components, and I was forgetting the rate rise, which he's absolutely correct. It's in there, it's on slide 6 of last week's presentation, 1.5% per year, and how we're going to use the capital surplus to manage it. There were two other numbers, the debt as a percent of the general revenues and the debt as a percent of overall municipal spending, and on both of those we are well under the cap that was proposed in our policy. So this is certainly a concern. I'm trying to figure out how urgent it is that, and we're having this public discussion because I don't know the answer, and I think all of us need to try to figure it out. Simply in terms of whether we are creating a prudent budget or one which is sort of politically nice in that we're not raising taxes, but is not really setting us where we need to go for the long term. So that's the struggle we're having, and what I heard Mr. Brush said is we are light on capital investments this year, and what I heard Mr. Kaiser say is yes, there's plenty of work to do. Now, what I didn't hear anybody say is, in answer to Scott's question, well, do we have the capacity to do it, or have we maybe cut staff a little bit too much to be able to handle that as well, or just got them busy with other things? So I don't know if Mr. Brush or Mr. Kaiser, you want to jump in on either of those concerns.
Well, I'll take the first crack, and then Bob can fill in. I mean, realistically, some of what Scott is saying is correct, that if the chances of starting and completing an additional $2 million worth of projects this year may not be a reality, but it's not unusual at all to start a project in one fiscal year and finish it the following year, because you have months of preliminary engineering work to do, then you have to put the project out to bid, and then you actually go through the construction. So we would probably utilize, I don't know, some outside capabilities to help us. I don't know, Bob can help out a little bit with how we would, move the projects along. But, they're multi-year projects. We never really get the money in one fiscal year unless it's a small project and get it completed. Unless, of course, it's, like the emergencies that we just did for the road improvements, but we can't take that action all the time, so I'll let you fill in the gaps.
Sure. What's really important is to have funding in place so that we can be in position, we're getting certain projects out for bid now, but looking ahead for next year, you want to be in position to get out to bid early because you get the best prices by getting out in January and February for bid. So, that's really what we want to be focusing on. So it's either, we put some more money in place now, or if we can consider the capital budget much earlier next year, that would be helpful because it's very advantageous to be out before everybody else gets out, because that's when you get the best prices.
Is there possibly a third option, which is to assess this over the course of this year and to bring a capital bond ordinance if we need it later in the year? Is that something I thought I heard Ms. Webb say, or no? Just following up on Mr. Kaiser's suggestion, he said maybe add some money into the budget this year, or maybe get the capital planning for next year done early so that they can get the bids out earlier in the process. I thought I heard you also say, Ms. Webb, that the capital plan can be amended at any point over the course of this year, so we can actually work through these questions throughout the course of this year and position ourselves for optimal bidding, as it were, in 2015.
Right, you could work through the capital plan for this year. What you're not going to be able to do is, once this budget's adopted and you want to fund some of these projects through possibly a tax increase, that we're not going to be able to do. So you have to kind of keep it into perspective as to where we are in the budget process as well.
Brian McDonald from CFAC. If I could just make 3 points. One, I agree completely with Scott that this is a complex topic and one worthy of significant study, and the hardworking Finance Advisory Committee could probably make some good progress over the next 6 months working with the staff. But it's complicated and it requires a lot of time and effort to really understand everything that is at work here. A second thing I would say is that the council and the staff deserve huge credit for all of the work that's been done, to get the operating budget together. And so I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there are an awful lot of people who've been working as hard as they possibly can to do the very best that they can for the citizens. And then the third point I would make is you don't necessarily have to think that a tax increase can only be used to support additional debt service, which may pose challenges for adhering to the very well conceived policies that are now in place regarding debt. We also talked about a desire over time to do less bonding for relatively short-lived projects that might have life expectancies of 5 years or 10 years. If you chose to, you could begin doing some of that now. The point is, if you, my point is a 1% increase in taxes provides $350,000 annually that if you chose to, you could apply to capital. You could either start paying for things without bonding for them, right? Or you could use it for debt capacity. That wouldn't be my recommendation, but it's not a topic that the committee has taken up as a group in this, with this set of specific questions. My only suggestion is that you've come up with an outstanding budget that right now requires no tax increase. But there's a big question on the capital side, and so I think what you're all wondering is there anything that you should be doing now or anything that you should consider doing now to address that. And I just think there are many ways to consider that topic and many objectives that could be achieved. But the last thing I would say is if you're going to start paying for capital using operating funds. You have to start doing that sometime. And I would just suggest that this year is as good a year to begin contemplating that process as next year, because if you don't do it now, right, that, I'm just using the 1% as an example, that $350,000, that's there every single year, right? So you increase the risk that you may need a larger increase in the future if you don't do anything now. And that's fine. It's your decision. It's just, something I encourage you to be thinking about.
And just to follow up on precisely that comment, this budget, correct me if I've got this wrong, Ms. Webb and Ms. Monzo, we do have staff time that historically has been capitalized that this year is not capitalized. So we heard that loud and clear from CFAC. And then the other thing, which I just heard today, is we're taking the increase from the university contribution and doing the same thing with that money, the $275,000. We are applying that to the work that we were intending to bond. So that we are reducing, in fact, the capital outlay, or the bonding side of the capital expense by that amount as part of this proposed amended budget.
Are there any other comments or questions from council?
I have a comment. So, I know we have 3 big road projects planned for this summer. I guess the Mount Lucas and those roads will those be completed this summer?
We're looking to have some of them completed. We're looking to have others started. There's actually 4 of them altogether. We have Mount Lucas. We have Prospect. We have Hamilton, and also we have Edge Hill. In addition to the projects we're doing.
The last one was what?
Edge Hill.
Oh, Edge Hill.
Yeah.
And then we're doing the repair, the $880,000 worth of repair.
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
So we actually have quite a bit of road work going on. And do you have, like the capital budget, do you have next projects in line? If we said, okay, we did want to spend $2 million more, do you know immediately where you would go with that money?
Sure. Bank Street.
Oh. You were supposed to say no.
That's the next one.
Oh, Bank Street. That's up next on our wish list. To-do list, right.
Right. And then we're discussing the entire budget amendment, right? Not simply the capital side.
Correct.
All right. So the last comment I have is the one that Ms. Webb preluded a while back, which is I'm opposed to increasing the line item for mayor and council. I think it should be at our current salaries.
I would second that.
Can you repeat what you just said, Patrick?
This was on the mayor and council salary.
I think it should, and I didn't hear that.
There's an increase in this amendment, and I'm opposed to the increase. I think the budget should be our current salaries.
I'm not even certain how did this get into the increase?
When we were looking back at our notes from last year, there was a discussion amongst council that in 2013, they would leave the salaries where they were at the recommendation of the Consolidation Commission, but that it would be revisited this year to discuss whether to take them back up to a higher level that was recommended by the administration last year.
And just for clarification purposes, this doesn't, having it in the budget doesn't, we would not be approving the increase because that would come through the salary resolution.
That's correct.
It just allows for that to happen.
Yeah, it would not authorize the salary increases until the ordinance is done.
Okay. But if it's not in there, we can't have that debate later.
Right, it would be just like it was in 2013. We budgeted the amounts in there. Council did not authorize salary increases as part of the salary ordinance, so the money just, is sitting there on our books.
But the reverse is also true, if I'm not mistaken, which is if we don't approve it now in the amended budget, depending on the salary and wage increase line and how much is there and where it gets spent, it is possible that it could be increased later.
Yes, it could be.
So.
Say that again?
All of the rest of the staff, the increase is coming from a different line item. It's not in salary and wages, it's in the increase. There's a separate line item in the budget for salary and wage increase, and that can be used for this raise at a later point as well. It's just in the same pot as everybody else, if we go that route. So, I mean, to me, if we're voting on it here in the affirmative, we're signaling the intent to give ourselves a raise, and I'm not signaling that intent. So,
Well, I mean, I hate this issue because, as you know, I was one of the main people totally against it because I was one of the people that took actually a cut. It was a cut in pay. It wasn't an increase at all. So every time that one says increase, it wasn't an increase. It was a cut. And I took it. I took it on the shoulder. I moved forward, and it was fine with me. Personally, I think that it should stay. This line item should stay where it is. We can debate it. We can discuss it later on, but I don't see a problem with it at all. I really don't. And as I said, I was one of the people last year that brought this up, and we all agreed to revisit it this year. And that was all of us agreed to it, and we haven't discussed it at all. So it hasn't been something that we talked about at all.
Right, that's what we're doing
now.
So we should talk about it, I mean, but not right now, right?
Given that it's 10 of 11 and we have other parts of the agenda, I would like to move us along because we do have an important closed session too. So,
yeah, but I guess I just sort of wonder why it wasn't in here before when we were having other discussions about this. That's all.
Right, the way that it's in the amendment when it wasn't in the previous. Why did that happen?
Well, when we introduced the budget, it was just one of the things that kind of fell through the cracks. We're going through trying to make sure we covered all of our bases. This was one of the items that showed up on a list, actually, that I had in my office for things that we should have put in here. It's not a big item. You can handle it either way you want to, but we did not want to just forget about it and pretend that we didn't have the discussion last year.
All right, so to be clear in terms of intent, I'd move the amendment, but with that particular increase struck from the amendment.
I'll second that.
I want to speak against that. I think last year there was discussion about salary, and there was a voice from the public that said we agreed to the borough salary structure for the first year of consolidation. And I think what I'm hearing from some members of council is that we ought to agree in perpetuity to a fixed salary. And I am opposed to that. I think that it penalizes those of us that came to council from a different background than people who came from the borough council, and I think that is an unfair way of handling it.
okay. Well, it sounds like we should probably vote in the spirit of moving on this.
Right, I would like to, I mean, I don't want to comment because I don't think this is the right time to have this discussion, but I do agree with Lance and Bernie that we should have the discussion. But
I mean, I'll just jump in that I would oppose that amendment then because that precludes us from having the debate at a later time.
Okay. So, was there a motion and a second? Because I want to make sure we...
There was. I moved it, I think.
But I think the original motion and second was to change it and strike that. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's to introduce the amendment as written, except striking that one line.
Okay.
And that was seconded by Councilman Krumler.
Okay. So it's the... No.
Jenny, did you second Patrick's? I did. Oh, you seconded Patrick's even though you're going to vote against it? Patrick proposed passing the
amended budget.
I did,
but
yeah.
striking the...
And I agree with him.
Okay.
Because the way to do this is not to, if we are going to increase our salaries, it's not, we should not be doing it by slipping it in and not having a discussion.
Perfect.
This isn't, but just to clarify, this isn't slipping it in. We'd have to pass it through the salary resolution. But I do have to say, this is a small,
I agree.
in the scheme of things, I know it's very politically big, but it's financially small, and I
I agree, and that's
wanna
why I'm
just
just
spend more time.
agreeing
Okay.
with Patrick.
All right, so
And
the
I think we
motion, there's a motion that's been moved by Mr. Simon, seconded by Ms. Krummeller, and all in favor?
Budget?
This is,
Well, the budget overall,
this
yes.
is on the amendment.
It's really small.
I'm confused because there was an announcement that we were going to be reducing the budget by $1.4 million, right? And now the resolution, and maybe I'm out of sync or something, is talking about increasing the budget by 3.5%. I don't understand how that fits together.
It does, that's not correct.
I'm talking about the operating budget. Because when the announcement was made on $59 million, the announcement was that it was going down from $60.4 million the previous year.
And now it's 59.3, so it's...
And now we're increasing it 3.5%.
No.
We're not? Isn't that what the resolution says?
No.
Oh, maybe, is she confusing the cap? The cap?
Okay.
Is it the cap bank that you were looking at? I think she was confusing it with the cap bank.
Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion that was moved by Mr. Simon and seconded by Ms. Krummeller, please say aye.
Aye.
And we better do a roll call on this one, actually.
Or hand raise.
Are you just going to do a hand raise? That's fine, too. Okay.
And she looked.
So is there 3?
Yep.
Oh, great. This is fun. All right, all opposed? Okay. I get to vote again. All right, I think we're all basically in the same place, that we want to have a debate on this at some point, and it's just a question of whether we have it in the budget or not. And in the end, I actually don't think it makes a huge financial difference if it's in the budget and we don't give ourselves the raise, it goes into surplus, and I think the amount going into surplus is pretty de minimis. And if it's not in the budget and we take it from the other funds, I don't think it's going to make a big deal with that either. But just because it's in here, I think it's actually more transparent to have it in here, so it's an issue that we're going to be voting on. I'm going to vote no. And so that whatever we are voting on, the motion fails 4-3. And is there a motion to move the resolution as written?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Mr. Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. And I will vote yes for that for the same reasons. And we have several more resolutions too. Yep.
Jenny, how did you vote on that?
I raised my hand too.
You voted, you voted no. Okay.
I thought I heard you say yes.
No.
So the resolution is written passed 4-3. All right, and we have 2 more resolutions here. One is the adoption of the 2014 municipal operating budget, and I believe the second one is the resolution for the 2014 municipal capital budget.
Yeah, I believe
There's
it
just
should
a little
be.
typo
Right.
there. And if we want, we can take them as a pair, if there's a motion.
Sorry, where are we in the resolution?
We're 14-114 and 14-115.
They're tabling it.
Oh, actually, it's correct.
14 is the operating and 15 is capital, and both are recommended to be tabled until we have the public hearing on the amendment, which will be on May 12th.
Okay. So we're voting to table both
Oh,
of
these
these.
were the old ones that we're tabling? I see, okay.
Well, actually, what we're doing is we've amended the operating budget, right?
Right, and the amendment is Resolution 113. We held the public hearing on the budget.
Yeah, we don't actually have to vote any further. We had this discussion last year on a different topic.
Okay.
Once you've amended the resolution, we
You
can't
don't need
vote
to
on
take
it.
any action, right?
Right.
Okay, well then, I'll just make the announcement that we'll have the public hearing on both of these on May 12th. Okay, thank you. And now with council's permission, I'd like to move up Resolution 14-123, because it's almost Bob McQueen's bedtime. And this is the resolution to award contract seamless docs website forms not to exceed $6,000 per year and $3,500 for a one-time setup fee. And this was what was referred to during the IT strategic plan presentation. I don't know if there's any questions for Mr. McQueen or if there's a motion. Ms. Carmella?
Well, I just wanted to make the comment that hopefully this will just be for 1 year, and when we get a website should have this functionality, the next website that we get.
Not normally with a website do you get this functionality. Actually, I just spoke with the League of Municipalities webmaster, who's their consultant, and he's recommending municipalities go with this software. After he's reviewed it, he feels it's the right solution for New Jersey. But you're going to have
The website that I'm familiar with that I work on called Drupal, it's a content management system. It has modules, it has a module called Webform that I've used it, and it
You can
does
make
everything
web
that you
forms,
said.
yes, you
Yeah.
can. But not
It's
to the
not that
level. This
hard.
is also storing them in the cloud. They're there for.
No, so this does too, it stores it in a database, but we could, I don't want to belabor this, but.
This also takes credit card payments with it to allow it as an interface so that payments can be made for applications that cost money or vice versa.
Well, that sounds good.
So.
Okay.
So is there a fee per transaction as part of this arrangement, or is
something we would have to discuss? There would be merchant service fees, as with any credit card that's taken.
So we're not approving that at this point. We're simply approving the forms portion.
We're just approving the forms, and then we can decide what's going to go on there.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman, seconded by Mr. Miller. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, now we've cleared the room.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
It's going to make forms a lot easier here.
Okay. I want to go back up now to Resolution 14-118, which is the waiver of attorney-client privilege with respect to Hill Wallach opinions to be used in arts and transit litigation defense. We asked whether there needed to be any recusals on this, and we got the opinion back that there didn't need to be. So I don't know if there's a motion. This is really more just administrative so that the planning board's able to fully defend itself.
I'll move it.
Moved by Ms. Crumler, seconded by Mr. Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Resolution 14-119, resolution, a PSA agreement with Miller, Porter, and Muller not to exceed $15,000.
Mary, there's just, I'm sorry, there's one correction on that. The agreement is actually for a not-to-exceed cost of $32,500.
$32,500.
500.
Okay.
It says 32,000 straight on the copy I'm looking at. Did it change?
32 straight?
Cover memo says 32.5.
What does, what?
Are there two different?
Well, the 32,500 would protect us. I don't see.
I'm looking at agreement for professional services. Number 2, Princeton agrees to compensate attorneys for a sum not to exceed 32,000. Is that what we're approving?
Yeah, got it here.
There's inconsistency between the cover memo and the actual document itself. The cover memo says 32.5.
Oh, the cover memo.
Yeah, cover memo says 32.5.
Should we go with what's actually written in the resolution then?
I don't care. I just want to make them consistent.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
No, I'm looking.
The table.
Yeah, the cover
The resolution I'm seeing that I'm linking to says 32.5.
Yes, but the agreement 2 pages down, it says 32,000.
Agreement.
Oh,
Christ.
Okay, in the meantime, can we move on to 14-120, which is the agreement deer carcass removal from Cream Ridge, New Jersey, for $50 per deer?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Ms. Butler and seconded by Ms. Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution passes. The next is 14-121, an agreement between Princeton and Small Animal Veterinary Endowment, SAVE, boarding of animals picked up by the Small Animal Control Officer, not to exceed $15,000. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Ms. Butler, seconded by Mr. Simon. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That resolution passed unanimously. And another shared service agreement, 14-122, between Princeton and Montgomery Township for animal control services, January 1st, 2014 through December 31st, 2014, not to exceed $15,600.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Butler, seconded by Ms. Krumiller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And do we have an answer for the amount?
32.5.
Okay, so going back up to Resolution 14-119, the PSA with Miller Porter Muller, not to exceed $32,500. Is there a motion?
So